This is our league, and this is your league. Broadcasting from the 55-yard line in Japan to the shores of the Great White North and everywhere around the world on Gridiron America Radio and the Sports History Network.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to From the 55-Yard Line on what is right now our first live stream on Facebook. As we're talking right now, we have been talking for a little bit here on Facebook. I think we got one person looking in, so it's kind of a beta test for us as we kind of move into the future here. And the reason why we're able to do this is I finally figured out how to use Zoom properly. So, it's worth, everybody was giving me all kinds of advice. Hey, use this. And then I saw this. Oh, I can do live stream with Zoom. So we're going to stick with Zoom. Okay. Well, enough of me yammering away here. We are with our guest. It's Dave and I, and we are here with our returning guest, good friend of mine who is on the mend. He's on the DL right now. Co-host of the Sports Lunatic Show, prolific author, awesome writer, and just a downright good guy. Howie Mooney. How you doing, buddy?
I'm working hard on the prolific author part. I'm working hard on the good author part. I thank you for calling me a good guy, though.
Okay, well, you deserve it. This is you're in the third time club, because this is your third time sitting down with us, and we're here to talk about some more stories, basically, because you've got a new book coming out. It's more Crazy Days and Wild Nights is the title of the book. And that's going to be coming out soon. Your other book, Crazy Days and Wild Nights, is... Well,
more Crazy Days and Wild Nights is out now. It's the follow-up to Crazy Days and Wild Nights. There you go. Dave's got it. It's out. It's available on Amazon. You can get it there. You can get both books there. It's if you have Prime, you'll have it like in a day or a day and a half or something like that. But
is it on Kindle?
I wasn't able to get this one on Kindle. It didn't give me what's the option to put it on Kindle, and I wanted to. And it's funny because Greg, when I was going through the steps, I thought of you, and I thought it's not letting me put it on Kindle. But what I will do, you and I will talk privately, and I'll send you my files, and you can read it that way.
I get a bootleg.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for sitting down with us. And I know Dave got the copy of your book here, and there's a lot to go over in a short amount of time. So,
that's the thing. I mean, you and I have talked for more than we said we had an hour, but you and I have sat down here and talked for more than an hour on many occasions so far.
Oh, yeah. So, Dave, I'm gonna cede the first question to you, Dave, because you got the book in front of you. I'll let you. I'm working the background here, just making sure we don't go offline as we talk. So, Dave, the floor is yours with the opening question.
I guess my first question is how long after the first book, or was it your intentions to come out with a second book right away? Because these stories are amazing. And like I said, I don't want to give too much out because everyone should buy it because they are incredible stories. But I guess my question, when did you realize I have more than one book here?
Well, to answer that question, Dave, we have to go back to the beginning, basically. The beginning of the story for me writing goes back to 2021, January 2021. And COVID hadn't hit yet. Or had it? I can't remember.
Already hit. It had already hit.
Yeah, it had already hit. COVID had hit. So I was coming home from work, and on weekends I couldn't go out. So I was sitting here in the house, and I thought, what am I going to do? And a buddy of mine, Steve Warren in Ottawa, who worked with me on Ottawa Lynx broadcasts in 1995, the year that the Lynx won the International League. He was the play-by-play guy. I was the color commentator, and I do the post-game interviews down on the field and stuff like that. But Steve put out a call. He had a website called sensnationhockey.com. and he wanted writers for his website. So I sent him a message and I said, Steve, I can write something for you. You can take a look at it and tell me if it's good enough for you. He says, Howie, you don't have to audition for me. He said, just write. And we'll put it on. So I started writing for Steve, and fortunately enough, the stuff that I was writing was getting eyeballs, which was great. There was a website in Toronto that we were doing the Sports Lunatics on, and he called me and he says, I see what you're doing in Ottawa. I want you to write for me in Toronto here. And I said, okay. And what that allowed me to do was, it didn't have to be Ottawa centric. It didn't have to be Senators centric. It could be about anything. So I started writing stories about things that I remembered from when I was a kid and from when I was a teenager, stuff that had just always stayed in my head. And those stories formed the kind of the foundation for the first book, Crazy Days and Wild Nights, which is right here. And
by the way, I take credit for how that cover is. Just for anybody out there.
That's right.
That's my artwork right there.
Yeah, this used to be a picture from a game that from Wrigley Field that I took when my son and I were there in 2016. We were sitting down the right field line. I looked at the scoreboard, but above the scoreboard was this just ominous dark cloud. The light on the field, everything was beautiful. The crowd, the stands were full, the bleachers were all full. And with this cloud above, I took this picture, and it just was this beautiful picture, but it wasn't a high resolution enough for the cover. And so you and I were talking, Greg, and you instead of what was it? Instead of a JPEG, it's an ART file. Is that what it is?
No, I think you had a JPEG, because
I had a JPEG. I had a JPEG, but you turned it into an ART file.
Something like that, yeah.
And I'd never heard of an ART file before, and I suggested that to the woman who published the book, and she tried that, and exactly we have what we have on the cover because of your suggestion, and you're showing me a file that I'd never seen before. But anyway,
yeah. I just thought I'd throw that in there. I digress. So
no, it's okay. The stories that I had written as a teenager formed the basis or the foundation for the first book. And I just kept writing from there, and just stuff that I found interesting or stuff that I found compelling. And that became a book. And I shouldn't say it became a book, because it didn't become a book. I had accumulated pieces, and I had accumulated a bunch of pieces. And I thought, I wonder if there's enough stuff here to put a book together. And I put a manuscript together, and I started, shoving it around, and it didn't get any traction. And so I started taking stories out of that one and putting different stories in, and finally, I talked to a buddy of mine, Danny Gallagher, he's written a whole bunch of books. I think he's up to now his 10th or 11th on the expos, and just alone. But Danny talked me through. Oh, it's called Explosion, by the way, and I think it's available. You can get it on Amazon. Danny's a great storyteller as well. But anyway, Danny talked me through the whole process and how to put the book together, how to contact people, who to contact, and he put me in touch with this woman, Donna Deering, who helped me put the book together and put what I had as a manuscript and turned it into a book. And then I just kept writing because I had time. It's like, I got time. So I kept writing and kept writing and kept writing, and amassed more pieces and more pieces. And so, Dave, that became the second book. And, working that way, I just kept writing and writing and writing. And as we sit here right now, I have 3 more books and maybe a 4th that are ready to go anytime that I'm ready to go. They can come out. And so, that's I hope that answers your question in terms of how.
That was my next question too, because I'm curious how many more these are amazing stories. That was my next question, was how many more do you have? Like, that's awesome. That's great.
Well, I have a third in this series, in the Crazy Days and Wild Nights series. And for anybody that hasn't seen them or hasn't heard about them, Dave, you're familiar with the stories, but what I like to find are stories that take place, and inside them there's an element that was totally unforeseen or totally unplanned for. And it forces all the people, the principals involved in the story, to deal with the consequences of chance, of random chance.
Mhm.
And so, you saw in the second book, and I'll tell a little bit of the story in this one. Everybody remembers the 1982 fight between Boom Boom Mancini and Duk Kim. And so in that story, I tell each guy's kind of story, how they got to this point where they're fighting for the world championship. Duk Kim, his story was just so compelling to me, fighting his way out of poverty. And when I talk about poverty, I'm not talking about poverty. I'm talking about abject, living under a bridge poverty, drinking out of puddles because to get water poverty.
Third world poverty.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. But he always knew that there's something better out there for him. And he got into boxing, and he boxed his way out of Korea and out of to the Asian Championship, to this World Championship fight against Boom Boom Mancini in Vegas in '82. And the way it goes, these were two guys. They were two valiant, two gallant fighters who refused to take a step back from the other guy. And this was back when championships fights were 15 rounds. And they got to the 6th, and they got to the 7th, and they got to the 8th. And as they got further and further into the fight, their faces became less and less recognizable as faces, and they were more like bloody pulps. But neither guy was backing down. And they got into the 13th and into the 14th, and that's when, the worst possible thing happened in the fight. And I'll leave it at that, because if anyone that's old enough, we know the story. But what I tracked was their trails, their paths to get to that point in their lives, the fight itself, and then the aftermath of the fight, and how everybody dealt with that. And neither fighter, well, Mancini was never the same fighter after that. But I'll leave it at that. Those are the kind of stories that I look for, and they aren't necessarily always sad. They aren't necessarily always violent, but there's a lot of that in the stories that I write.
Yeah, it's more than just a fight that happened.
Yeah,
something that happened. There's a lot more to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the stories that I write, there are more than just stories about a game or how the score ended up the way it was. It's something that happens in the game that causes these people to have to deal with something possibly for the rest of their lives.
Well, in growing up in Buffalo, and we talked about this before, I do enjoy the Legend of Taro from the first film.
Yeah.
Growing up in Buffalo, it's just, I honestly, you can't, if you're not.
That is a great story.
You have to be a certain age to understand that story, or to even heard that story, and then to understand on how a draft went back then, and then just to hear the whole story. It's just, I'm reading it and laughing, because it's such a hilarious story at the end of the day. It really is. How they pull that off is still, to me, a hilarious thing.
Well, and you had the humorless president of the league, Clarence Campbell, who just.
It was a different time. Hockey.
You're right.
Hockey was run a different way. It just is just a different thing. It's just. I had something in my mind that I was going to say. Oh, because I talked to Ben Sugimoto, who was the grandson, or it was the grandson or the great grandson of the family that owned the farm and the fruit stand that between St. Bonaventure and Buffalo, that that is the center of the story, basically. But Ben was great in terms of giving me all the information that I wanted. That's awesome. No, that's great. That's great. Well, in looking at the new book, I guess, once again, I mean, every one of these stories is just phenomenal. It's just depending on the going back in time or how it's shaped. Like I said, I don't want I want to do this without giving it away, but it really like just like the character of Frank Beaton is just is amazing. And it's like I'm looking at this, I'm like I'm looking at it first going, okay, I read the title of the chapter, I'm like, okay, I worked in professional hockey for 12 years. I've heard a lot of different stories. I'm like, I truly have never heard of this one. Like I mean, I can reference like Bruce Schuppon getting arrested all the time in the Central Hockey League and beating up police officers and all that stuff, but I've never heard his story. Like it was great, just to hear out like how wacky the World Hockey Association was, just how it was just different than the starch of the NHL, as we were just talking about. Um,
That's so true. That's so true. The stuffed shirtness that was the NHL at the time, and for no real um, uh, appropriate reason. You know, the WHA came in, and I don't think they intended to be as fun as they were. I don't think they intended to be as wild as they were. But I told you earlier before we started recording that I sat down with Ed Willis, who was the guy who wrote the Rebel League, and just a long time newspaper guy, especially out of Vancouver for a while, and just the stories of the WHA at the time. They go beyond kind of belief, or it's almost like we were talking, Greg and you and I were talking about animes and mangas, before we started recording, and how you have to suspend disbelief in order to believe some of these things. Well, the WHA was the same way. You almost had to suspend disbelief in order to be able to follow along with their story arcs. It was just weird and wild.
I always viewed the WHA along the lines of the AFL, in the aspect of, I'm not sure how many of these players were actually thinking they're going to get a chance. Like this is, granted they're going against NHL, but it's still the next tier down. And some of these guys, they grab some high priced players, but they still were filling them in with other players. And they're like, you know what? I'm getting paid to play hockey. I wasn't expecting to. I'm going to have a good time at it for as long as it's going to last. And a lot of them did. And they had a really good time. And you're living in Alabama, or you're living in the South, and it's 70 degrees out playing professional hockey. You're not trudging with your bag in minus 15-degree weather from the rink to the bus. And it's like making some decent money. This isn't the worst thing in the world.
Well, and it brings to mind a lot of the things that happened in the movie Slapshot. And the movie Slapshot did not occur in a vacuum. And in the second chapter of the new book, I talk about Slapshot, and I talk about how it was made, and how Nancy Dowd put the whole story together, because her brother played in Charlestown at the time with the Chiefs, and she wanted to get the vibe of the Johnstown Jets, not Charlestown.
Yeah,
the Johnstown Jets.
Say,
yeah, the Johnstown. Yeah, my brain. I'm on some wonderful medication with my hip replacement, but yeah, her brother Ned played in Johnstown with the Jets, and so she wanted to get the vibe of Johnstown. And at the time in the 70s, it was a really hard time economically in the country. It was a really hard time, for a lot of people to even buy tickets for hockey games. It was one of the last things on their priorities list. But the Who Owns the Team theme became her raison d'etre in writing the story about Slapshot.
Yeah, no, working in professional hockey for a bunch of years. I tell you, all that stuff is believable. Like I don't think everything that happened in that movie, I can say, you know what, they might have embellished a little bit, but the basis of it all happened, because
so basically it was a documentary.
It was kind of.
It was really kind of. You have a well-known director and a star involved, and then you're filling it in with some newer actors, some hockey players who can act and things like that. But my time was the mid '90s to the mid 2000s, and all these stories are like we had the Hansons come in and when they were doing the 20th anniversary of the movie, they were doing their tours and they're coming in like they all played hockey. This all had like all this, and it was funny listening. Like there's a lot of things that they didn't put in the movie, and I've seen my fair share of shenanigans and working in minor league sports where I'm like, all of this happened and probably toned down to some degree so they can get it on the movie. So people weren't arrested for some of the crazy stuff that they've done. So it's spot on. Like it was just I can't I tell people all the time like you might think this is some wacky movie from the wacky hockey movie from the 70s, but it happened. All of it happened.
It did. And having played hockey myself for 40 plus years and having been a teenager in the 70s and having had to escape from some arenas sometimes because the people didn't like us beating their team, fans jumping onto the ice, trying to fight us in their street shoes and throwing garbage cans. I remember having a Mickey bottle fly past my head. The 70s were a wild time in hockey, not just, I mean, it's nothing like I watch hockey all the time and it's fairly sanitized now. And it's very, very, very talented skill wise, but there seems to be a little bit of character and a little bit of life that's missing from it, from the way it used to be, even in the 90s. It's a different game today, and they've taken a lot of the violence out for sure. And that's probably a good thing. But I can remember some nights where we'd come out to the parking lot and, when I was a teenager and our coach's tires were slashed, it was hockey was a rough thing at the time.
Mm-hmm. And it was led by a lot of you see a lot of the characters, like the coaches, like so a lot of that was, John Brophy's the first one that comes to my mind, and just so I don't mean to go in the weeds so much on this, but there's so many characters in the 70s. Like it was Don Cherry, Coach Damricks before my time working for them, but this was 25 years later, and they're still talking about Don Cherry. They're still talking about those legendary Amherst teams of the 60s and just how and what they did and things like that. It's just, you just don't see that. You don't minor league hockey has changed so much where that connection, and it's tough. It's a different time. And I think I'm that old guy back in the day, how it used to be, but it was just how it was. That's just how it was.
In my day, we didn't have hair dryers or microwave ovens. If you wanted your hair dried, you stuck your head out the window in the middle of a tornado. That's the way it was, and we liked it.
Back in my day, we used a pencil.
What is this pencil you speak of?
Yeah. Well, I guess I wanted to, along the lines of the book, talking about the stories, and you want to find a little more behind the stories. What in the second book would you say was the hardest or most difficult to get the background to complete the story?
Probably the story of Matt Dunnigan's incredible night in 1994 where he threw for 700 yards.
Friend of the show.
I know, and I love that episode. I go back to that episode and re-listen to it so often because so much of what he said in your episode, having to learn how to be a pro after coming out of college, that's a real thing. And I've come across that when I've interviewed former, especially in football, but in hockey as well. And I've brought it up to people, former players, and I say, was there ever a time where you had to learn how to be a pro? And they say, oh my God, yes, I had to learn how to be a pro. And it never really dawned on me until I listened to you guys talking with Matt Dunnigan and just the personalness, the personality, everything that Matt Dunnigan is and everything that Matt Dunnigan ever was came out in that interview so well. And I keep going back to it.
That was an interview. Dave, I don't know if I know you've heard that. Pretty sure you've heard that interview that Scott and I did with Matt.
Got the book the next day. It was awesome.
When Scott and I mean, we got done and we both, we're online like this and we're both like, wow. I mean, it was a real, I mean, Matt is great on TV, He really is. In fact, I like him more now. I probably with the beard because it's. I saw him. He had the beard. I'm like, oh, that looks really good. Because when we talked to him, he didn't have the beard. Um, but yeah, it was just one of those interviews where you're like, wow, that was phenomenal. And of course, living in America, trying to explain who Matt Dunnigan is. But then when you compare him, I go, basically, he's the CFL version of Terry Bradshaw. Because
Yeah, kind of.
they went to the same school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they both kind of had, I mean, kind of had similar careers, even though Bradshaw stayed with one team, but Matt went to other teams. And they're both in broadcasting. They're both doing pregame. Matt to me I watch him and I'm like, man, what a great guy. So anyway,
that's what I felt too when I listened
Yeah.
to your interview with him. I thought, geez, there's a guy. I really like this guy, the person, the human being that he is, because he's giving his time. He's not like grudgingly giving his time. He's like enthusiastically giving his time with you guys,
Yeah.
and he's telling stories. And that's the thing I love is hearing those stories, the stories that nobody ever gets to hear, the stories of training camp, the stories of carrying other guys' equipment when you're a rookie, the stories of giving up your beer chits to the veterans because you're a rookie and you're having to learn how to be a pro. That bar they had up in what it was like a tree house or something, you know. All those stories are just so wonderful. One of my favorite interviews that I've done on the Sports Lunatics show, and you can find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Apple Podcasts, wherever, is an interview that I did with Joanne Polak back in Easter time of 2022, I think. Joanne Polak, for those who don't know, she was the general manager of the Ottawa Rough Riders from 89 to 91. And the stories that she told, first of all, she's the first woman to be a general manager of a professional sports team in North America. And secondly, the stories that she told trying to keep this franchise, this legendary century-old franchise afloat at a time when the CFL was having a lot of trouble. The stories that she told in that interview are some of my favorite stories. Just stuff that people probably even in Ottawa didn't know about the Rough Riders and about how their contract worked with the city and how little money they got from the city, for all of the stuff that they did, and just the stories of the previous GM had a spittoon under the desk, and when she got the job, she gets to her desk and she looks at that thing and almost throws up because of it. It's just still sitting there. All those little things, those little stories. It's one of my favorite my favorite interviews that I've done, and it's, as I said, it's on the Sports Lunatics show. You can find the Sports Lunatics wherever you find your podcasts. But you scroll through, and you'll find the interview that I did with Joanne Polak, and it's as I said, it's one of my favorites.
And what was, with the Ottawa Rough Riders, because you've written a book about the Rough Riders.
Yes.
What did the Rough Riders mean to Ottawa back in the day?
They meant everything.
Okay.
They were the only professional sports team Ottawa had for a long time. And as a kid growing up in Ottawa, I loved the Rough Riders. My grandfather was a season ticket holder in the North Side stands back when there were only North Side stands. And when they built the South Side stands on the opposite side of the field, my uncle bought season tickets there. So I thought like having season tickets to the Ottawa Rough Riders meant you were like the richest man in the world because that's what they seemed like to me. And so when I was 12, I had a paper route, and the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, had this deal at the time where if you were a kid and you started an account with them for $5, you could get season tickets in the end zone seats for the Ottawa Rough Riders, and it was done around the CFL as well. It was called their logo is a lion and Leo the lion, so they called it Leo's Leaders. And that program used to exist in cities all over the CFL, and that got kids like me and my brother hooked on CFL football. My brother works for the team for the Red Blacks now, when he does the stats for them, and I was a season ticket holder. I covered the team for TV. We went from being these little kids that sat in the end zone, hoping a ball would land in our laps, from a field goal or a missed convert or something. Now, we ended up, working in either with the team or for the team in some capacity. But, at that time, the Ottawa Rough Riders were everything in Ottawa. The 1960s were a tremendous sports party because in the Eastern Conference, in the CFL, you had either Ottawa or Hamilton in first place every year. And they would beat each other just to the bone to try to get to the Grey Cup every year. And this past week, in the Western side, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers had that kind of from 56, I think, to 67, 66 or whatever in the West. And two of their players from that dynasty Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, Kenny Plain and Jerry James, both passed away on February 14th this week. So, but reading everything about them made me look at Ottawa, and Ottawa had as their quarterback Russ Jackson. They had Whit Tucker, they had Ronnie Stewart, and that was the three-headed monster that Ottawa had. And so they were the kind of the similar Jerry James and Kenny Plain in Winnipeg. But those three guys, back then too, players didn't make a lot of money, so they had to have jobs outside of football. Russ Jackson was a teacher and later a principal at the high school I ended up going to. And Ronnie Stewart was a lawyer. Whit Tucker was a lawyer, I believe. They all had jobs outside of football, and it stayed that way for a long, long time in the CFL. But the Rough Riders, even through the 70s, they were the biggest thing in town. They won the Grey Cup in 76 on that dramatic Clements to Gabriel touchdown. In 81, they had a crap team. But they never had the same lineup twice. Injuries, cuts, things happened all through the season. And finally, the last two games of the regular season, they had the same lineup, and they seemed to catch some kind of lightning in a bottle, and they started to play well. They finished in second place in the division that year at 5-11 because the rest of the division was so terrible. They played Montreal in the Eastern semifinal, and they got by the skin of their teeth. They went to Hamilton. Frank Cush was coaching Hamilton at the time, and that team was 11-5 or 12-4 or something like that. They breezed through the regular season. Ottawa went in there and surprised them by beating, I think it was 14-7. Pat Stoko got both touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, in that game. And he was a slot receiver. And I remember sitting down with him for like an hour and a half. And you can find that episode on the Sports Lunatics show as well. But Pat, the interview with Pat was one of my other favorite ones, probably because my first sports love was the Ottawa Rough Riders. And the fact that he played for the Rough Riders, it was one of my most fun interviews, just getting to talk with him about that year and about his career. But, after 81, life in Ottawa as a football fan got really hard because the team got really bad. We still went to the games. Super season 88, the team went 2-14 or 2-16. I think we've gone to an 18-game schedule at that time, but they won 2 games all year. It was supposed to be a wonderful celebration of football, and it was just awful. And then in the 90s, it changed owners. They went to a group ownership in town, and then they sold it to Horn Chen, and then the Gleibermans. So the Gleibermans, then Horn Chen, and it just became just a gong show in Ottawa. And people stopped going because they knew the team had no chance of winning, not because they didn't like the team or appreciate the franchise. They just didn't like going there anymore because they didn't like seeing losing all the time. And covering the team in 91 and 92 or 92 and 93, sorry, was difficult. Mind you, a team like that, like the Rough Riders were, bringing in guys like Dexter Manley and stuff and people like that, personalities who were past their primes,
right,
and had nothing left football wise, but they could give you a good interview. That made the job a little bit easier, but it was tough. And by 96, there was nothing left in the tank for the Rough Riders, for ownership, for the fans in the city, and the team folded after the 96 season.
And of course, the 90s, that 96 year, I mean, you're talking too, that was the time period where you had the CFL expansion in the States. You had a lot of financial problems. It just seemed to me, I mean, and looking at the period, for his people who look at the CFL now, who are fans now and new fans in America, when they're looking at the CFL now, they don't really get how important the 90s were to the league, and really kind of how, though they learned a lot of hard lessons that fortunately have not been repeated, at least in the CFL, in terms of, going for, just expanding just to get the money, kind of taking a step back. Obviously the pandemic put up, the league took a financial hit, but maybe looking back on it now, do you think it was a smart idea from a business standpoint now? Because we're so many, going on 4 years after the pandemic, for them not to have played. Do you think taking that season off actually may have saved the CFL moving forward now?
I don't know if it did any of that. I don't know if it saved the CFL. I don't know if it hurt the CFL not having the money come in.
Right.
But
in the
I mean,
long term,
I don't know. I never thought of it that way, Greg, to be honest. When I think of the game now, I think of the players more than I think of anything else.
right.
And how did it affect the players? And I'm sure a lot of the players were hurt by it.
Yeah.
And the players need to have money coming in.
Right.
And so I'm sure having a year off did not help them at all. And I'm sure it drove a lot of the players out of Canada and back down to the States to play somewhere, just to play anywhere, whether it was a spring league or whether it was whatever. But I never thought about the thought of it saving the league.
Well, and the reason,
But I remember when you and I talked, I think the first time, it was around the time when the XFL and CFL were talking about merging. Am I wrong about that, or am I right?
yeah, that was about the time. Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. No, I'm just thinking about now, because nobody ever talks about, at least I haven't seen it, maybe just because I'm on the other side of the world right now, but I don't hear anybody talking about whether or not the CFL is going to be around. It just seems to me that after the pandemic, the league got right back on its feet, and we got some new owners in. I know there have been some ownership issues with Montreal, and obviously BC has turned itself around.
Yes.
In the big city. So with Montreal, and obviously with the Argonauts, I mean, MLSE seems to be fully committed to the Argonauts, unless I'm seeing something different.
Well, I think that's true, and I think too that 2023 saw a real resurgence in terms of fan interest in Toronto, because fan interest in Toronto has always been an issue.
Right.
But it became a real issue probably in the last 15 years, because I moved here to Toronto in 2003, and at the time, it was I wouldn't say it was a ghost town, because there have always been diehard Argo fans in Toronto. There will always be people that will go to the games.
Right.
But it seemed like 2023 drummed up excitement that we didn't have previously. And my hope is that those people stick around for the long haul, because I love the CFL and I don't care. I will go to Argos games. I grew up in Ottawa. I grew up an Ottawa Rough Riders fan. I'm a Red Blacks fan, but I'm a fan of every team in the CFL now. And just going to Grey Cups and meeting people from all over the country, and people from the States that come up. People come up from Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
Still, and meeting those people, and knowing that we are the ones that are on our little island. We are on our CFL fan island, and we have to stand together. No, yeah, we'll throw rocks at each other during the season because I don't like your team, you don't like my team. But the thing is, we are all kind of the same person when it comes to our CFL teams. We love our CFL teams, and if my loving your CFL team helps the whole league
Right.
survive, I will love your CFL team because I don't care. I love the league more than I love any individual team at this point in my life.
Yeah. And the great thing is with the CFL, it's the history, it's Canada. To me, I mean, I grew up in Illinois, what used to be French Canada.
Mhm.
It was settled by people from Quebec. So I've always had with Canada, I've always had a love affair with Canada. And Montreal is one of my favorite cities. And but with the league, I mean, it's just so much history there. And that's the thing with, during that, talking about the XFL merger talks was always the hard thing for me to deal with, at least as an American, dealing with the ignorance of my fellow Americans down where I was at. Now, obviously, Dave's near the border. So, they up in Dave's neck of the woods, they know they at least should know what Canada's all about. But, you know, further in, for further into the States, there was just a huge disconnect between what people perceived about Canada and what people actually knew about Canada. And I think the good thing that came out of those merger talks is people started down in the States, started taking a look at the CFL and realizing, hey, this is a pretty good league. I mean, you had a lot of, podcasters jumping on the bandwagon. Hey, I like that, starting their own, God love them. I mean, they do actually, they do a great service to help promote the league down in the States. The Markcast, our show, my buddy Oz Davis and Joe Pritchard down at the Rouge, White, and Blue podcast too. I mean, so Americans are starting to take notice of the CFL. Unfortunately, the TV contracts really aren't helping too much in the States. But now that the
That
games are available online for free, hopefully, yeah, go ahead.
that's going to be huge. And in terms of attracting fans and maintaining younger fans, having online viewership or having the possibility to watch a game online, it's going to be huge because how many of us now still go to our TVs and watch the TV on the regular channels anymore? I mean, even as we speak, I've got a hockey game that I've streamed all night with the sound down, because it's in Ottawa and Ottawa's getting killed. But
Right.
it's not on my regular TV here, but I'm streaming it. I'm able to do that on my TV. But streaming is, I mean, welcome to the 2010s. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
CFL, welcome to the 2010s. It's so important that younger people have a way to watch CFL games that they may not have wanted to watch or wanted to see through regular TV. They can watch it on their phones, they can watch it on their tablets, however they want to watch it. It's there for them now. And thankfully, touch wood, it stays there for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Because engaging the younger fans, it's engaging me as a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, got me to be a lifelong CFL fan. Engaging these kids today as young kids will make them fans of whatever for the rest of their lives as well, whether it's CFL football, Major League Baseball, anything.
And I thought the new platform this year was wonderful. Online, I mean, the app, being able to do some fantasy. I thought that was really a step up. And you throw in the streaming, it was perfect. It was awesome.
Yeah,
But
there was
the
some
question
grumbling about it, but all worked out. I mean, when it first came out, it was like there was a lot of grumbling, but it worked great.
and
But
I think
sorry, I was gonna say, isn't there always grumbling about something when it's
There
new?
always is, yeah.
and that's what I think. I think the grumbling was I knew how to find it on ESPN Plus. I want to go there. I don't like something new. And then people were online going, it's free. Go to CFL. I mean, literally, it's free. You don't have to have ESPN. But I'm so used to going there. Why can't I go there now? Like, it was just, but I guess, my question was going back when we were talking about the Argos for a minute. And it's been great to see the resurgence and just the interest in the Argos again. Like, that was my team growing up in Buffalo. It was yes, Hamilton was a tad bit closer, but it was always Toronto was always the bigger picture for us in the States, seeing it, even though I went to Hamilton hundreds of times. It was just like it just seemed like it was worlds apart for us on our side. But looking now and seeing that it's almost 10 years now, close to being at BMO, do you think there was did going to Skydome or Rogers Center now being so cavernous, it gave no vibe of a feel for the Argos. Could that have hurt the following? Because it was such a vast, it's just a big place. And it never felt like it had a feel.
I think a lot of the injury to Argos following in Toronto went back to when I think Harry Ornest, if I'm not, and I want to get this right, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, when he owned the team and blacked out home games, because and I think that forced the team to be lost to a generation of possible fans, and that was the start of it. And then what you were talking about too, Dave, with the if the Skydome was empty, if Rogers Center was empty during a game, then it felt like we were rattling around in there. The 20,000 people were rattling around a 50,000 seat stadium.
You get 30,000 people, and it's still like, where is everybody? Still 30,000 people. Like, this is a great crowd.
yeah, it's true. And I remember when my son
optics
was little,
are everything.
You're right, Greg. But I remember when my son was little too, and he was in Wolf Cubs, and his Cub pack was going to an Argos game, and so I tagged along, and they formed the little corridor where the players ran out, and there's my son, and he's like this big, and then the players are all this big, but he loved that experience, and now he is a CFL fan, whether it's Ottawa, whether it's Toronto. I mean, we went when the Red Blacks came back in 2014. I can't believe it's that long ago already. But we went to the first game, and it was a concert by the Trues outside, and it was you could stand out, and it was free, and it was loud, and it was. But then we spent basically a good part of the afternoon and into the early evening before we even got to the game, before we walked into the stadium. Walking around and looking at all the things that there were to see, and then we saw the game, and this expansion team beat the Argos in their first ever game, and we were there, and I mean, it bit him, and he's there now. He's there for life, and yeah, I think it's so important to engage young people early. It doesn't matter if it's a CFL or if it's whatever, hockey, baseball, football, anything. Get the kids when they're early, excite them when they're there, and they'll be there for life.
Yeah. And one other question too, just about CFL with television. Is cable going? I mean, I know in the States streaming is taking over. People are cutting the cord. Same thing in Canada. Are people getting rid of the cable companies, which TSN obviously,
No, I don't think so.
No,
not at all. Now, mind you, there are levels of packages that you can get.
Okay.
There's Bell and Rogers, and they have levels of packages. If the very basic package, TSN is a Bell property, so if you have Rogers, their basic cable doesn't include TSN.
Oh, wow. So the reason why I was asking is streaming the future. Is streaming going to be the future for the CFL as it is down in the States with the NFL, say on YouTube TV?
I believe so. I believe that it will not only be the future for the CFL, but it'll be the future for sports in general in the future.
Okay. Dave?
Well, 100%. We're here. I mean, if you guys saw the announcement between ESPN, what is it? ESPN, Fox, and Discovery about the three of them teaming up and having like a super sports streaming package. Like, if they're talking about it, it's just a matter of time before all the big four here, that's the direction they're going. I mean, it's going to be that. It's going to be how, on the sports side, I see it, is how they can monetize it and then make it affordable. So go to somebody who's going to pay them a ton of money to get it, and then make it reasonable for all of us to watch it, with the aspect of Amazon or someone like Amazon can pay a ton for it, and then because they have everybody under the sun. Or I'm really curious on how the MLS and Apple long-term partnership is, because that's more of a global brand sport than say the main sports in the United States. Like, so where hockey is huge, and hockey will always be that place in Canada. It's just it's just what it is. And
Yeah.
that's like soccer. That's like soccer around the world. So the media, I think the media in the United States just don't understand the impact that Apple can have on this sport, because they still look at soccer as that fifth or sixth or seventh
Right.
sport.
I'm curious though to ask you guys, because you guys live it, but I mean, you guys are sports fans, you guys are sports guys. In the States now, you can watch English Premier League on Peacock, can't you? And I mean, I'm hearing from people talking about European soccer more than I ever heard anybody talking about European soccer. You know, and is it because of the streaming that they have the access to it, the easy access to it that they didn't have before, that allows them to watch it?
Yes, in all the competitions, like the Paramount Plus, which is the CBS version, they have the UEFA League, and you're getting Bundesliga, you're getting the German league, you're getting everybody now. You're getting the La Ligas, and you're getting the Mexican Division One. You're now to the point where 15 years ago you would get glimpses of who these players are in England. Now you're watching every single game. I mean, you can watch that Wrexham team, their fifth division, and you can buy a package to watch fifth division English football. Like, that's how, I mean, if you wanna watch it, you will find it. It'll be on your screen somehow.
The way we're watching sports now, and I'm kind of referencing back to your Howie, to when you and Sean talked about the demise of Sports Illustrated.
Oh,
How we view sports nowadays was written about back in the 70s by the great writers at Sports Illustrated, like Frank DeFord and, you know, all those other guys. We live in the future now, and watching sports is it's amazing just how much easier watching sports is now. I know, you know, for me being in Japan, so if I want to watch English Premier League, I have DAZN, which is DAZN for those who are in the States who are listening, DAZN.com, but it's an international based out of Britain. But here in Japan, hey, I can watch my J League 2. We've got a local team, and I've got all the Japanese baseball teams except for the Hiroshima Carp. They're not, for whatever reason, they don't, another one of those don't broadcast their home games on the streaming service. So, you know, who knows? But yeah, but we live in the future now, and it's so amazing. Even more amazing is the fact that we are talking 3 different countries. Howie's in Canada, Dave's in the States, I'm here in Japan, and despite the technical difficulties we had right before we went live here and everything, we're able to pull this off tonight with the magic of technology. So, Howie, before I let you go, let everybody know how to find your book, how to find you and Sean over the show, and we'll wrap everything up here.
My 2 books that I have put out in 2023, Crazy Days and Wild Nights and More Crazy Days and Wild Nights. The best place and easiest place to get them is on Amazon. As I said, if you have Prime, you order the book, it'll be at your place on your doorstep within a day or a day and a half. And that's you know, here they are. If you want to look for the titles, look for the there we go. There. Anyway, if you want to find the Sports Lunatics show, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio. You can find us too, Sean and I, on thesportslunatics.com. We have a page there. You can go through, you can find recordings, you can find written materials, you can find all kinds of different things at thesportslunatics.com. You can also find the Sports Lunatics on YouTube. I believe it's just look up Sports Lunatics or the Sports Lunatics in the search page on YouTube, and you'll find us. We've got a lot of stuff there as well. Shawnee is, he's working incredibly hard on a lot of this stuff and putting a lot of the stuff up.
Right.
And he tonight is hosting a trivia. He hosts trivia evening at one of. He's out in Nova Scotia, and I don't even know if they're going to be out there tonight because with the snow. But he was saying that I sent him a couple of questions, and he says I might use these, but that he could not. He had a previous engagement, so he could not be here tonight with us.
Okay, and for everybody who is tuning in, and right now we're on the live stream, so I see one viewer. It could be my mom. I don't know, but hey, if you're but if you're watching this on the replay, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us on the podcast. Thank you as always for listening to us. And from the 55 yard line, you can find us at fromthe55yardline.ca. And we are on the Sports History Network, and you can find us at thesportshistorynetwork.com. We're also on YouTube, and look for the Sports History Network on YouTube, and you can find the podcast there. But like the Sports Lunatic Show, we are everywhere you could, pretty much, I think, on every podcast platform that I've been able to see. And just like I said, it's amazing. We're all of us here, all three of us, we get to be 12-year-olds again and be back in, back in the day we were growing up. Oh yeah, I'd love to be on the radio. Yeah, it'll never happen. But now, hey, look, because of technology, we're all radio stars, even micro level type radio stars.
Yeah.
But yes, with all that said, thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Listen, and keep an eye out too, because I think what I'd like to do in the future as we're moving on here, as we're going to have you on and talk more CFL, because that's the roots of the show. And I wanted to get to free agency today, but just we're running out of time here.
I made lots of notes too. I made my notes on the back of an envelope.
Well, you know what? I mean, I know right now because you're on the DL, so you're readily available. So who knows? Maybe next week we'll be having you, depending upon our schedule and everything, how next week's schedule goes, bring you back, talk CFL free agency, because we're right now with the free agency, it's still going. I mean, it hasn't ended yet.
Nope.
We don't know where my guy Lucky Whitehead's going yet. So, I mean, I may switch allegiances from the BC Lions to wherever Lucky lands. So, but anyway, with all that said, thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. This is Greg speaking for Dave, Howie, and Fran. Hey, and Fran, we'll be back probably next week. We'll be going over his Around the League segment. Thank you very much for listening, and we will be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hit 'em hard and make them fumble, make them fumble. This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.